Please welcome Scott Roxborough.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you all for coming here. Hope the traffic didn't hold you up too much, but that is LA. The subject of our panels today is on the future of film, and as just mentioned, I've spent far too long in this industry already. Been covering it for better part of 2 decades, and I think I can safely say that there's never been a more transformative period than the period we're right in the middle of. I mean, this American film market is sort of bookended by 2 major new streaming launches. Apple TV launched shortly before the market. Just after the market wraps, we're going to have Disney Plus's service go out. There's been no time that I've been in the business where we've had more production and more demand for content and more money flowing into the entertainment industry. At the same time, on the studio side, the supply has gotten less and less, where the studios are making bigger movies, but fewer of them. So it would seem to be that this is an ideal time for the independents because there's a massive demand and less traditional supply. But the film industry's traditional models seem to be breaking down, and there's a huge struggle right now to figure out how to continue to make movies independently, how to get them out there, and also, because you're all business people here, how to make money doing it. People here on the panel today have found a way to do it, and do it incredibly successfully. Bron Studios, I think you could safely say, is if not the largest, one of the largest independent film producers and financiers in the world. They do a lot of their own stuff. They also have slate deals with 2 studios, with MGM and Warner Brothers, making some small minor films that you might have heard of, like Joker. They've been incredibly innovative in how they make movies, how they get them out there, and have been incredibly flexible in transforming their business model a couple of times, I would probably say, over the almost 10 years that they've been in business. To just give a little intro to them before we start the discussion, we have a little trailer to sort of introduce Bron Studios and give them a bit of a taste of what they've been doing. So can we roll that trailer? All right. Yeah. Don't let that intimidate you. They're actually quite nice. So yeah, please, quick introduce panel. Before I start, though, just for this session, we're not going to be doing Q&A, so don't send in any questions to my iPad because I'll be ignoring that. But I'll try to get all the questions that you would want to ask in. Here on the panel with me are Aaron Gilbert, CEO of Bron Studios, Ashley Levinson, Chief Strategic Officer, is that right? And Anjay Nagpal, who's Chief Content Officer at Bron. Aaron, maybe if I can start with you. As I said, Bron turns 10 next year, right? So you started this back in 2010. Can you just give you a sort of pocket history? Because the film business back then, 2010, was quite different than it is now. What was your idea or vision for Bron when you started? Why do you think it was? What you thought you could do in the industry? And what's been the biggest changes from then to now?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. My wife and I started Bron amazingly almost 10 years ago, which to me, I think just the fact that survival of 10 years is one of our greatest feats, because as we all know, this is not the easiest industry to always be in, but you have to find your way through it, and that's what we find a way to do. When we first started off, honestly, Bron I never had the aspiration to do quite what we're doing now. I didn't understand the business very well. I fell into the film business, candidly, 10 years ago. So Bron is 10 years old, as is my career in the film business. So I came to the film business from other areas of entertainment and had to learn it. So the first many years of Bron's life was very indie model, really putting together smaller films, learning and trying to understand the international sales market, trying to figure out how to deal with debt financing, trying to figure out how to put projects together when you didn't have a lot of money and definitely at the time didn't have any real track record to point to. So at that time, it definitely was a different time for Bron and also the industry, where packaging shows and the whole having a runway to deal with international sales and sort of making that part of your financing plan, and all of that was definitely our business model at the time, which we've now evolved. Bron is definitely a company that stands firmly with one foot in the independent world and one foot in the studio world, and depending on the content that we're making, we'll put structures together that are more indie models or studio-backed models.
Yeah, I mean, maybe both of you in here as well. Maybe Ashley, for you. Because what Bron does is quite interesting, because it does mix a lot of different types of models. Can you very briefly just talk about some of the ways that you make movies, both on the studio side, because
It's so different with everyone. I think that's
is
what.
it literally each project
Yeah,
is
yeah.
completely
No, I
new,
think that's what
new model?
excited me about Aaron and Brenda, is you have two people that don't have a cemented ideology about how to make things. So it can come to us at a script. It can be an idea. It can be someone we want to build something around. And I think the agility that we have as an independent studio, bringing that to the studio system is good too. So it's really very different.
Well, can you give maybe an example? I mean, we saw a couple of your new and upcoming projects.
Yeah.
With maybe Bombshell, the
Bombshell's a
Roger
long
Ailes
story.
project.
So Bombshell, I was at Annapurna when Bombshell was being developed, and we loved the script, and they were looking to syndicate some of the financing, and so I
Meaning,
talked
just
to.
so for people who don't know how financing works, syndicate financing meaning?
Syndicate financing means they were looking for someone else to help pay the bill. So we were in a position where we could, and we were interested in telling that story. I shared the script that we had received from Megan Ellison and Chris Karabi with Aaron and Anjay. They read it. They saw the same thing I did. Charles Randolph is an extraordinary writer. They had a fantastic team. We also had the best cast ever. We had Charlize Theron, Margot Robbie, Nicole Kidman, John Lithgow. It was Allison Janney. It goes on. And we believed that it was an important story to tell. So when the film started to come apart, which they weren't in a position to continue to finance, I remember talking to Aaron, and he said, let's do it. I believe in it. And this is the reason we're in this industry, is we want to tell these kinds of stories. And with Jay Roach and this team, we believed they could do it, even with the limited pre-production time they had. And so we stepped in. We dealt with IATSE, and which is the union, and SAG and DGA, and we closed their deals, and we actually fully financed the film until we got distribution. And you guys can imagine that the Murdochs are a little bit litigious. Don't print that, sorry. But they might be. But it was a complicated one in terms of taking it on, and we did that.
I had hair when that one started.
And Anjay, maybe also come in for you, because on the creative side, it seems to me that's got to be one of the most difficult things at the moment, because there's no end to supply of content. We've got an endless flood. How, for you, even on the script side, do you decide what projects to go into? What do you need, or what do you think? What are you looking for, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, it is a tricky question, but I think that Bron has a strong history of telling stories that represent voices from all over the world. It's always been colorblind. It's always been gender blind. It's always been about, not necessarily always underrepresented voices, but kind of really trying to take a swath of the world and tell stories that we think reflect the world and that are important to tell. I think that's kind of the thing that we look for first and foremost, and then also we look for a vision behind that story as well. So a directorial vision, something that we think will make a script unique on the screen. So it's a combination of interesting stories, well written, and with a flair and a vision to take that and realize it to the screen.
But has there been a change? Because when you started in a very traditional indie film model, doing films like Fences, Birth of a Nation, sort of traditional indie films, Sundance type movies, which they were, and those type of movies are having a real difficult time getting theatrical releases nowadays. They have a very difficult time sort of getting financing and so forth, and doing a lot bigger movies, and in addition to your studio slates that you're co-financing. Is it now a case, do you still want to do small movies? Can you still do small movies? Or is the market shifted in that you need to have something big in order to even get it into theaters these days?
it's sort of in my DNA. I have to make some small films. I want to get behind, first-time filmmakers. I want to get behind important stories, and sometimes those difficult stories have to be made at a modest budget, And so for me, for us, historically, the types of films we've always responded to are films that really are based on something culturally important, socially significant, other. So many of our movies, and you talked about Fences and Birth of a Nation. Like Birth of a Nation was a movie for me that helped change our company, as did Fences. The year that those two movies came out in 2016 was really when Bron was kind of on the map. Nobody sort of heard of us before that, because so many of our films, although we worked with really wonderful filmmakers, were smaller movies, and they're directly having the same issue today, is finding that strong distribution for those movies. And how do you put that together? How do you sort of ensure that you can get your films out to market? And I think nowadays, for me, I actually love how the business is right now for myself. Like for me, for us, as a company, like there's so many different avenues for distribution. For us, it's really, there's a word that I talk about all the time, which is discipline, something that my wife and others will tell you I'm not so great at sometimes. But the word discipline for me is that, we have certain stories we want to tell. And it always starts on the page for us, and then it starts with the filmmaker vision, as Anjay said. But some of those stories have to be told the right way at the right budget. You can't sort of build them into structures that you want to make for 15, 20, 30, $50 million if really, the audience is, potentially smaller, or if it's more specific, you have to sort of just be mindful of how you're putting that together. So for us, we're developing stories and getting involved financially in stories at every budget level, quite frankly, and have very different structures for each one. Several of our movies are going to be definitely built and made in partnership with streamers. Other movies are going to be built and made in partnership and sold through independent distributors. We work closely with A24 and others that we like very, very much, and do such a great job on the very specific kinds of movies that they make, and they're the best at it. And then on the bigger movies that we make, we're fortunate enough that we have a capital partner in Creative Wealth that allows us to, co-fi our bigger films. So now, because of our relationships at the studio level, we're able to really develop our projects in-house, package them the way that we want, and then go and find the right partner, a studio partner for those movies. So Bombshell with Lionsgate, Taylor Sheridan's movie, Those Who Wish We Dead, we partner with New Line and Warner Brothers, and so on. So that's essentially, each project is sort of a little business unto itself that we had to figure out how to curate and put together.
And why do the studios do business with you? Because, they don't need the money. What is it that Bron offers that you have two big studio slates? What do you offer the studios, because they can always go to the market and get plenty of cash to make their movies?
I think it's the fact that we make movies, and we understand their business. We understand we understand how difficult, whether the movie's $2 million or $200 million. Although we've not been involved with any movies that size yet. I don't know if we will, but we understand what they do, and I think that our objective is to be a good partner to them. And I think that we're very fortunate to have, obviously, tremendous success with Joker and other films that are part of our venture with Warner Brothers and with MGM. But for them, I think, in working with Bron, because we understand the business, I think we're a good partner, and that's our job, is to work with them and support them however we can.
And can I ask both of you, when you say you're making films of all different budget levels for all different potential platforms and distribution strategies, when do you make that decision? Is it when you're reading a script?
That's I think, the hardest part of our jobs right now, because the landscape is shifting so quickly. I know we say that at AFM every year, but this year, really, it's shifting more than ever. You have obviously the streamers, which some of their theatrical strategies are still a little TBD. And then you have studios now who have their own platforms. So how will that change how they do things in terms of dealing with the traditional the way that they used to do things, which is to put films through home entertainment and then through pay TV output deal. Well, now they have their own streaming services. Will the films go straight to there? Will that bypass the home video window? There's a lot of question marks. But really, figuring out when the problem is that when you're making a film, sometimes you don't have a second bite at the apple. And what I mean by that is, I think if you rewind to the early days of Netflix, there was a thought process, whether right or wrong, from certain producers that, you could take a film to the festival, and if it didn't win the festival, and if it didn't sell for $20 million, then you could sell it to Netflix or you could sell it to a streamer. That's not the case anymore. Everyone wants to get involved earlier and earlier. So, Netflix wants your movie early now. They don't want it after you haven't been able to sell it to others. So sometimes you've got to make the right decision early on because there oftentimes is no second option or no bailout.
I think one thing that Bron has now, I think just because we're sort of more mature as a company than we were when we started off, is that we build runways. Not always. Sometimes things move very, very quickly, but our goal, especially with so much that we have in development, is to have that runway to really properly develop and package something so that when we have to make those difficult decisions, because they are difficult, and you're not always right. That's the reality. You're not always right. But when you have to make those decisions, hopefully you have a bit of a runway, you have the opportunity to sort of really explore what the best outlet is.
Speaking specifically to the streamers, because as I said at the top, we've had two new big ones. Well, another big one just launched. Disney's coming out in a few days. Then Peacock, the NBC Universal one will come up, HBO Max, and so forth, and on and on and on.
It's really confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. From your guys' perspective, I mean, what does that do for distribution? I haven't seen any model yet that combines streaming and theatrical in a way. Amazon tried to do it, or they did it a few times, but they seem to have maybe pulled back a bit from that. Argonauts, their big film, was not really a theatrical release. Do you see any cooperation happening? Do you see any hopeful signs that there could be a way to cooperate between, or is it going to be a sort of siloed world where you'll have the streamers on one side and your film goes there and it'll never see theaters, and you have another model where it'll actually hit theaters and then go down the line?
Well, I think you do see a bit of a hybrid that's starting. I think like even Apple in one of their new movies that are coming out, I think it's The Banker, right? That is going to be coming through Bleecker. I think Bleecker is taking it out theatrically first. And I think you have other films, like I believe The Irishman is going to be in theaters to a certain number.
Yeah, but it's a small, very small.
Fair enough. But I think it's also like whether you're a Martin Scorsese, which there's really only one, or a younger, smaller filmmaker, you still want to, people want to see their movie in theaters, a lot of people. And I think certain films definitely, we do everything we can to have them in theaters and see them there. But I think in collaboration with streamers, like you find a bit of a hybrid, like some of the conversations right now on certain movies of ours that we really feel are films that could potentially be awards films and are big, broad films that we want to have in theaters and have that communal experience. Also, we would love the idea of working with one of the streamers because it means people globally will see our film and see it quickly. So finding that balance of like where can we be comfortable with a certain number of screens so we have that experience and we can sort of ensure that the films qualify and can, if moviegoers want to see it in a theater experience, they have that option. But also, hopefully the world will see it through a streamer too. So we have lots of models, and we're doing certain things with the more traditional model, straight to studios that are taking things globally, and others where we have a very hybrid model where it's theatrical in certain markets and with streamers in others.
And is it still the case when you do a deal with a streamer like a Netflix or whatever that it's essentially a buyout deal? Because it's not that traditionally hasn't been the model that they've been able to give you any upside based on how successful. No one seems to know how successful your film is actually on Netflix because they don't release numbers. Is that still the model? Is that an issue for you guys as as businessmen business people who want to make money off your movie?
I mean, I'll just give one quick anecdotal example. We had a film that went to Netflix last year, and they did a really good job actually of calling us and telling us how the film did around the world. We're not to talk about that, but they gave us, I think it was 1 week after first week's results and then 1 month's results. And then, so we did get information, feedback by territory, and they were very, thoughtful in how they communicated with us after the film hit platforms. But so there is, it's not a complete black box for the filmmakers. But to answer your question, yes, there's still mostly buyout deals for the most part across the platforms.
And no matter how well the film actually does, if they're giving numbers, it would seem to suggest that they might encourage, or pay a filmmaker back a bit if their film does incredibly well on their platform. That's still not the case.
Or you can get a sequel, right?
What? Yeah.
Or you get a sequel.
Okay, that's true. That's true. Which is almost more of a TV model. You'll get a next season. Can I ask, Ashley mentioned, was saying that the sort of idea of diversity is sort of in the DNA of Bron from the very first. Why is that important for you guys? And is there a business reason behind it, as opposed to just sort of a woke reason for it? I mean, what is the importance for you, also from the business perspective, of having sort of diverse voices and diverse casts and so?
Well, I think that's something that really excites us, is telling local stories around the world, because there's so many fascinating ways that we can learn and be inspired and shift. And I think, it's interesting to see how the films are performing, that historically you think if there's a certain demographic internationally, it wouldn't do the business it's done. And I think that that's been proven wrong. And so for us, when, Anjay and I joined the company, it was a company that was supporting Fences, was supporting Birth of a Nation. And Birth of a Nation was one of the biggest sales at Sundance. And so I think from our perspective, we know that there's interest, we know there's an audience, and it's a matter of telling the kinds of stories that can help to reach that audience. And we're really proud of Fences, and we're really proud of the slate ahead, because we think that inclusion does have a marketplace.
I'll just add one other thing. Like for Brenda and I, my wife Brenda and I, who owned, co-founded the company, always from day one, it was important for us to tell important stories. That's who we are. That's what we will continue to do, and that's why I think when we look at the fact the company has grown into making these big studio movies, which is wonderful and all, that was sort of my comment earlier about it's in my DNA. I'm always going to make sure that we tell that we are constantly telling important stories at whatever budget that is.
Has it become, though, riskier to do political films, or films that, because you saw, of course, what happened with Birth of a Nation after Connection Nate Parker and stories about his past came out, and that ended up in some ways torpedoing the film or its release. There was a case with The Hunted, this Universal film that was criticized by Trump and was pulled entirely. You still are making political movies. You made The Front Runner, the Roger Ailes film, Bombshell. Is it a more difficult time? I mean, how do you calculate that into the risk of what you're doing?
We got to tell important stories. That's period. And how we put those films together will obviously change to protect ourselves and protect our filmmakers, and to ensure that we can do things in a financially strong way. But we have to, all of us, this whole room, we have to tell important stories. That's what's critical. Like, that's what's required. That's what's needed, not only in the United States but everywhere. And we won't stop doing that. We will continue to augment our business model. Like, I think you asked earlier about how our models changed over the last decade. I would tell you it's probably changed. Sometimes it feels like it changes every 6 months. Our chief legal officer, Joel Gralnick, references Bron as like dog years. Like every year at Bron's like 7 years, because like our growth has happened so quickly. But so within that, and with all the changes that have happened in the industry, which we actually are so excited by, we have to continue to evolve, and that's what we keep doing.
You talk a bit about what you're doing specifically now in that terms of involvement. What sort of new, say that every project that you do has a different model, has a different structure. What are some of the new things that you've done in terms of structuring, the new models that you've developed? Because they say in the old structured model, the sort of pre-sales model, which AFM was sort of built on, is kind of falling apart. It's very difficult to get films made in that space. Some still do it, but it's difficult to make it just on pre-sales. What are some of the models that you're using now with specific projects, either on film or TV? Because we haven't even mentioned your TV slate, which is also very impressive. I'd be interested to know some of the new ways you're putting together projects, sort of on a financial side.
Well, the TV business for us, especially the international TV business, really you can liken it to the independent film business from years past. If you see how some of our TV shows, we have a big business that we're growing internationally, where we've got local content in Scandinavia and France and Germany and all sorts of Italy, et cetera, markets around the world that our international TV group is based out in New York, and they're doing such a great job building these shows around the world. And really, if you look at the model and how they're putting their shows together, it's an indie film model in essence, where they're sort of setting it up with a few key markets that are commissioning broadcasters that are working with them. And then through those key markets, there's a certain amount of money that's coming forward. And obviously, like independent film, we want to film and shoot the movies, shoot the TV shows in places where there's, soft money and tax incentives and other ways that money can be pulled forward into the financing structure. And Bron is fortunate that we're able to deficit finance, so we can deficit finance our shows and drive them into production quickly and do our best to control distribution as best we can. So I think the one thing that we try to do, it's a constant conversation amongst this team and our larger group, is that we essentially want to hold on to our content and hold on to our rights as long as we can, because we want to develop them, we want to position them, we want to be able to partner with the best companies plural, in whatever market that might be. So on the TV business, in being able to sort of self-finance development, which in TV, if anybody, I'm sure many here are involved, it's so much more expensive developing in television than film. So the TV business, which has been a learning curve for Bron, we're now into our kind of like maybe our two and a half years in-ish, something like that in TV. But that model is so similar to independent movies, so we understand that model, and it's where we came from. So for us putting those structures together, for us has felt very natural to do it. Taking that over onto the film side, I think the fact that our company has been fortunate enough to make so many movies, we've got direct relationships with a lot of key buyers in certain markets. So some of the things that we're able to do is talk early with buyers, get market intelligence from buyers, and talk to partners in France and UK and Germany and other places around the world early, as opposed to trying to create something, put something together, and hope take it out to market to see if they like it afterward. We really sort of do that market intelligence. Anjay and his team spend so much time interacting with global buyers to really get a sense of that market, that community, what they're looking for, and then hopefully get them in earlier than later, which is how we can pull forward and make our financing plans more solid.
And what do you see then as the biggest challenges at the moment? You say how the market's changing almost daily. What at the moment, just at this, taking the beat at the moment here at the AFM, what do you see as the major challenges for you on your day-to-day business?
One thing I think that many people would attest to is that everything's very competitive right now. So if you're on the hunt for IP, book rights, even short stories, anything that's packaged is going to be very competitive and very expensive. I think that's something that we face every day, because there are so many buyers, and as you said, there is so much money coming into the industry right now, and also not only just the prices of IP, it's also kind of availability of actors, directors, even goes all the way down to crew. But it's just a really busy, robust time. So if you're trying to get together an independent film, I think you have fewer choices today than you had in the past, because more people are working across around the world in different across film and TV.
And then, I think we should start to wrap up, but can I ask all of you, because talk about challenges and so forth, but you guys seem all to be fairly optimistic. Your company's doing really, really well. Why is that? Give me your sort of one for the vision looking into the future, why you're optimistic looking into the future in an industry that a lot of people seem to have a lot of problems working in.
Well, if you're doom and gloom, why are you doing this? There's a lot of other things to do. There's a lot of easier industries to be in, and if I only did this, if my wife and I, if our team only did this to make a buck, we're really doing the wrong thing, and we're approaching this the wrong way. A couple of comments just real quick. I think the reality is we are very excited by it, and there's so much stuff that's happening for us right now as a company, and I think the reason for that is, what we talked about earlier, trying to be good partners to studios. We want to be good partners to filmmakers and good partners to creators, and that's really what is, I hope, in our DNA, and we spend so much time building in those relationships, which that pays off over time, because if you treat people the right way, it truly does come back in a good way to help you and support you. And you can see that in the fact that we've made multiple movies with different filmmakers and different family members involved with other filmmakers, etc. And so for us, right now, we're in a nice place where we have wonderful relationships with creators and filmmakers that want to work with us. And for us, what's exciting is that it truly is a global business. And Bron has, I'm not sure if people follow the trades about us, but you can see that we've made investments around the world into companies in Mexico now, and Spain, and India, we just partnered and invested in a company in India who's an extraordinary group that's there, and we're right now closing a deal with a partnership in the UK. Like we're really looking at this business on a global level and trying to find those incredible voices in all of these markets around the world as well, and how do we support them? So it's a global business, and for us, we're excited that we get to be part of it.
Actually, same question for both of you. What makes you optimistic looking into the future?
I think to echo Aaron, who we agree with completely, it's also there's so many platforms and so many different ways to tell stories. It's not just film, as we mentioned, it's television, it's podcasts, it's short form. There's a lot of exciting ways for artists to be able to tell their stories. So to be able to support is something we're really excited about. And I think the challenges excite us as well, is how can you stay competitive and how can you support artists?
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of echo a little bit of what Ashley and Aaron said. Specifically, film is hard, independent film is hard, but there are more ways to tell stories than ever before. There's more formats, so whether it's Quibi or podcasts or whatever, there's just a lot of opportunity that have lower barriers to entry, where you can start your story. And I think that's really exciting. And just one quick example of that, Aaron mentioned our Indian joint venture partner. Well, we've actually, we're trying to co-acquire a book right now, and the plan for that book would be to create a docuseries, an audio podcast, and then potentially a scripted series. So that's with a partner on the other side of the world. So that opportunity, in a nutshell, I think is what's exciting about the industry right now.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Please, applause for Bron Studios.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. I'll be staying up here.